So the next question is from Muchi. And Muchi asks the following. He says, you often make scathing comments about unprofessional reviewers and how they barely play the games that they review, etc. There's a legit criticism, but why do you review Dark Souls? Why did you review Dark Souls back in the day after only having seen 10% of the game? Even reviewing Battlefield 4 after only playing the multiplayer for a little over an hour could be seen as unprofessional, as you've barely scratched the surface or tried any of the weapons. Shouldn't your legit criticism of the mainstream gaming media be applied to yourself as well? Okay, let me explain. All right. First of all, when I say that reviewers are being unprofessional and they're reviewing something but that they're not playing, all right, I'm talking about someone who sits down, plays a game for an hour or two, says, I don't like this game, and then writes a review. Because that's not professional. In order to do a full review of a game, you do need to play it from start to finish, and then give your honest opinion on everything in the game. Now, I'm talking about a game with a single-player campaign. A game with multiplayer is different. And the reason that a game with multiplayer is different is because multiplayer can change. Multiplayer, your initial sitting and playing the game, can change the next time you play it, and then could change after a month when everyone learns the multiplayer, the ins and outs of it, and it could change again. So you get a little bit more leeway if you're reviewing the multiplayer of something versus playing the single player of something. Now, the first thing he asks is, he says, why did I review Dark Souls back in the day without beating it? All right? Because I couldn't progress in the game anymore. I was at a point in the game where if I wanted to progress, I was going to have to backtrack for hours, redo shit that I didn't want to redo, and waste my time. That's not the purpose of a game, in my opinion, to waste my time. The purpose of the game is to be entertained. I wasn't going to be entertained trying to fight my way back out of that fucking bog that I was in, and trying to fix my sword, which was broken, and trying to do all this stuff. That's not entertaining, all right? But why did I review it if I didn't beat it? Well, I felt that I had played the game to a natural progression point in the game where someone like me, that's as far as you're going to get. There are other people who are capable of doing it. And, oh, I want to go back and I want to fucking spend 2 hours to rebuild my sword and grind and grind and grind and then get back to where I was and keep going. And they love that. I don't. That's not what I like. And you realize the only reason I went back to Dark Souls this year is because I played it online on stream. People jumped in to help me, told me where I was supposed to fucking go and what I was supposed to do. I was able to do it. I was able to finally beat the game. All right? Now, first of all, your statement that I was only 10% into the game is completely false, okay? If you remember how far I'd gotten in the game, I'd gotten pretty damn far, just not to the point where it was like, you know, what was it, near the end game. I'll admit that. I didn't get to the end game of the game yet. I had rung one of the bells. I needed to ring the next bell and then finally fight the final 4 bosses, and then it would have been the end game. But I did get a significant chunk into the game to understand this is the gameplay of the game. And essentially when you're reviewing a game, that's what you're reviewing. What is the game about? What is the gameplay like? What style of game is this? And is it good? So the subjective part there is it good? But everything else is objective. So I could tell you, it's this kind of game. This is what you're going to see in it. It has an outstanding amount of content based off what people have told me. And here's my rating. So when I rate a game, that's the thing. You notice that when I rated Dark Souls, the first thing I said in the review was, I didn't beat the game. I didn't beat the game. In order to do a full review of a game, you do need to play it from start to finish. I quit it at a certain point. So right there, if you don't want to hear a review of someone who didn't play the entire game, you can say, okay, that's it. I'll go. I'm done. I'll leave. He didn't beat it, you know. Not that you're going to sit there thinking that, yes, I did beat the game, and this is my honest opinion based off of me beating the whole game. That's the problem with these reviewers, is that a lot of them don't reveal that either. I know for a fact that there's some reviewers that don't beat the game, and then they review it, because when you read the review, you can tell that they didn't get to the point in the game where maybe it picks up, or maybe what they're saying isn't true. And that's unfortunate that there's unprofessional reviewers like that, okay? But the bottom line is people wanted to know my thoughts on the game. It was the first game where it was a major game that I quit because I couldn't beat it. And in order to do a full review of a game, you do need to play it from start to finish. The game's extremely difficult. Some people will love it. Some people won't. I'm not one of those people who love it. But that's just subjective. However, I can see the combat is complex. There's a wide variety of classes you can do. The graphics are good. Of course, then if I had known later on that the graphics were going to be awful, I probably would have said, otherwise with the frame rate drops and stuff. But there's an outstanding amount of content. The game's very long and challenging. I gave it a fair rating. In order to do a full review of a game, you do need to play it from start to finish. And a lot of people were happy that I did that and I gave a rating based off of my experience with the game. That's really what a review is. It's based off of your experience with the game. In order to do a full review of a game, you do need to play it from start to finish. Multiplayer of a game today could change in a month. This is actually one of the things that happened with Modern Warfare 2, okay? That a lot of people had issue with me picking it as Game of the Year, but it was funny. When I picked it as Game of the Year, not a lot of people had issue with it. 2 months later, a lot of people had issue with it because at that point, the multiplayer had evolved. Everyone was quick scoping. Everyone had found these really abusive strategies online. They patched it and it changed it and it made it even worse. And people complained, wow, this game is now unplayable after a few months. So how could it be Game of the Year? And the answer was it was my Game of the Year when it was new, before people found all the abusive shit. So even now, if I review a game now, it could change because it's multiplayer. It's constantly fluctuating and changing. It could change in a month or two. I've seen reviews where it's like, oh, it was really boring, and, you know, you never really do this or this in the game. It's a 5 out of 10. I'm like, wait a minute. If you played, you know, 2/3 into the game, yes, it picks up at the end. All the things he's complaining about are resolved. So it's obvious that they're not doing a professional job. In order to do a full review of a game, you do need to play it from start to finish. I didn't beat the game. I did terrible.